Hi everyone, this is Kelly from The Truth in Story, and I am here to, well, this video we're going to look at the Oracle. These are two decks that are by Layla and Olive, and they are based on Botanical. Although the tarot does have some human elements, just a few human elements. It's basically, you would think of it as based on what you could find in the garden. There are snakes and mostly plants, of course. And these are really beautifully done decks, again, by Layla and Olive. The oracle is called Pythia Botanica Oracle, and the tarot is called Ophidia Rosa Tarot. Again, today we're going to focus on this, in this video we're going to focus on the Oracle. I will have a separate video on the Tarot. So I saw the Oracle, and I've seen it around, and I've seen the Tarot. I think first I saw it through Larissa from the Bard's Lament here, and that was the first place I saw the tarot. But then I saw the Oracle, and I really thought, oh yeah, I have to have the Oracle. And then of course Patrick and I are generally on the same page with things, and I sent him the link to the Oracle, and he said, yeah, that's the link I sent you to before on, I think, both of them. Anyways, he talked me into getting this one. This is what I wanted. This is what I ended up with. No regrets, no regrets. But yeah, so this is a set in terms of, they would definitely work well together. If you like having sets, such as, I love using the Wild Unknown and the Animal Spirits. I love to use those decks together. There's other examples of that, but I really do love, in terms of visually and energetically, I do like decks that work together. I also use decks that are completely different, and they have work together in really neat ways, but there is something special sometimes when you have two that are kind of made from the same energetic level, and they just work beautifully. So we shall see. I'm going to set this aside though, because we're going to take a look first at the Pythia Botanica Oracle. So you can see right away it's in a really lovely tech box. It has the nice cutouts. It's really beautifully laid out in terms of the visual art. It's got some cards on the back. It says, an intuitive oracle deck rooted in mythology, infused with plant magic. Each deck carries 48 hand-illustrated cards and guidebook designed by Nicole Raylis. So this is copyrighted 2016. This is obviously, we're in 2017. I've seen a lot of this recently, so it's definitely gaining momentum right now. Inside we have the space between blooms and you, the pregnant pause, the fever view, the rose, the bee begotten through stardust strewn with pollen, the marigold horizon where the sun and moon have fallen, supernova scabiosa, gravity and artemisia, photon faded to futures cards, a broken glass, the keenest shard. So that is beautifully in the bottom of the box. And you can see already this sort of tea staining, which is really gorgeous and follows through on the cards as well. That's something I really love in the Oracle of Reflections, the beautiful French deck, and I love it in this as well. So this one does come with a guidebook here with sketched illustrations, and it has the name of the plant as well as the keyword that's used, and then a little bit here. So there's not a lot of information here, but you do have some information. We'll look at that at the minute. The only issue I have with this, and somebody please feel free to say, Kelly, you're crazy, but I don't understand this, where we have, so this is not in order. It's not in order from alphabet, from the keyword. It's not in order from the plant. Neither one of those terms is alphabetized, and there are no numbers on the cards. So for example, when I first got this, I pulled a card, you'll see the fix. I pulled a card, and I literally, because it was just one of those busy days, I went through this book twice trying to find the plant that I was, the card. If I have a deck that has a guidebook, I want to be able to open the guidebook and find what is the, be able to find it quickly. I don't want to mess around searching through a guidebook. So that to me is a really big pet peeve. Up until now, my biggest pet peeve has been weird copyrights, big copyrights on cards. I think that this pet peeve is starting to rival the copyright pet peeve, because it makes things a lot less usable. So at Patrick, actually, I put these in order because I was going to do this, but Patrick beat me to the punch, and he did, so it's out. We have it alphabetized by the plant, because we're going to be working with plants this summer, and then it has the page number, where to find it, and then it has the keyword also next to it, which is nice. And so I've just taped that into the back of the book. But this is the second in a last couple of decks. This is the second time I've had to make an index, and I just don't think that, either, again, I said this before, there's three options here. If you don't want to have them in order, or they need to be in order in a specific way, then put an index. This is example of this is with the fairy enchantment. There is an index of the cards with where to find the page numbers. My Celtic tree oracle does the same thing. It's not in order, but there's an index. So there's an index. Secondly, you could just number the cards and have them in order of the number in the book. Thirdly, you could alphabetize it to the title of the card, and have it, have the cards alphabetized in the book so that you can alphabetically find it. Now, those are three options to making it easy for somebody to pick up the guidebook and find it. And I know there are people who are going to watch this and say, chill out, like, what's the big deal? And it's not a big deal, but it is an irritation. And so I believe that the purpose of a guidebook is to be useful, right? The purpose of a guidebook is to help us to find the information that we're looking at. And if we're in the middle of a reading for ourselves or something, or for somebody else, and we're like, oh shoot, like I want to get a little more information on boundary, which is aconite, I don't want to have to sit here and look through this whole book and try to find aconite. Like, that's I don't want to do that. So now I can look here, and I can see, oh, that's over here on page 27. So, halfway through the book, I've got aconite, and now I can read that it is boundary, either meant to dissolve horizons or establish safe margins of personal interaction. While ambiguous in purpose, there are vital forces among your borders to address. Admit them or cast them out. There must be a grave line drawn you must confront, because this is actually poisonous. So, yeah, so I'm going to leave that go, but I hope that this is not a trend that continues. So, other than that, this is just an absolutely stunning deck. The box is beautiful, as we've already seen. The guidebook is lovely. It's got a nice sheen to it. It's bound. It's a little bound book, which I love. It is beautifully set up. It's got the little, the plant on it. Like, let's go back to 27. So it's just a black and white image. Now, these are not highly colorful images. They are very beautifully tea stained with a limited palette of colors. But you can see in the guidebook where there are colors here, you don't see that. So it's just the black and white sketching or inking of it. But it's really lovely. And so it has the keyword boundary, it has the title of the name of the plant, and then it has the description of this as a reading. Now, it doesn't necessarily give you any information about the plant itself, which would have been nice, except for, of course, again, they're limited in space. They're trying to get it to fit in the deck, and so that's going to happen. So, we can look those things up. That's not a big deal. That's part of learning and working with a deck. So I don't mind that at all. But you do at least have it in terms of an oracle. You've got a nice little thing to point you in the direction of where to go if you have have no clue what this plant might be, right? It gives you the oracle here. So really lovely little guidebook. Unveil your prophecy, botanical spirits to light the way. It says on the back. LeilaOlive.com is the web address. It says, this was designed to be read intuitively, allowing the reader to happen upon personal meaning and context in their pull. However, should you wish to find your bearings within an objective framework or merely need a torch along umbral corridors of understanding, let this guide help light the way. Before reading with the deck, it's important to get to know these cards and messages they carry. Look through each card, fusing the guidebook with your own intuition to unearth meaning. Cleanse the deck with sage or crystals, pour your energy into it, let it soak under full moon, and invite these botanical gifts into your rituals. These cards are meant to be read on their own or in union with a tarot deck. Clear your mind, focus on unfettered inner truths, and allow the Pythia to unveil prophecy before you. And so it has a 3-card spread of mind, body, and... oh, I see. There's mind, body, spirit, past, present, future, opportunities, challenges, and outcome. And then there's a waning moon spread here, which I'll definitely give a go. So there we have that. Does talk about Pythia, who was a priestess. We invoke the myth of Pythia, an ancient priestess whose visions channeled prophecies from Hellenic gods, also known as the Oracle of Delphi. Her divinations were steeped in mystery and enigmatic wonder, a trusted presage that loomed in the hearts of all women and men who sought to persist against fate. Sorry, even with my glasses like this, the print is quite small. Again, understandable. They're trying to keep it all contained in a thing, but that does make quite small handwriting for someone who has. I have my reading glasses on, but it's still a little rough. And then she talks about how she embarked on the journey of creating the Pythia Botanica with an uncloaked spirit, open mind, and hungry heart, lost in plant magic and guided by Mother Nature through the illustrations of each card. I do like that she does say, I hold the Tarot and Oracle deck sacred and truly infuse my soul into the Pythia Botanica with the hope that their cards will bring light to those who read them, which is really lovely. She also says at the very back here, for my grandmother, Despina, you embody everything that is light in this world, a beacon of wisdom, love, and support. I always wanted to follow in your footsteps. So, and then for Pete, you're my sun and moon, the brightest star. You never cease to amaze me. But I thought that was sweet that for her grandmother. So, there we have that. And then, of course, we talked about the box. Beautiful box. Really, really high quality. Gorgeously done. I'm going to set that to the side. So here we can see the backings. Well, first of all, we can pause for a moment. I think this is probably and I know that this is apparently just like the Star Child tarot, but I have to say that this is really, in my opinion, the most gorgeous gilded edged cards with this matte gold. Although I do love, a good high shine. Like I love the Fountain Tarot's gilding. I do love a nice, but this to me is perfect. This is exactly like the 1889 Lenormand has the same beautiful gilding. It's really stunning. There's nothing else to say other than it's perfection. And the back as well, I think, is perfection. It is not reversible because here we do have the snake's head and the snake's tail. I love the moons. And I love this tea staining even on the gray. Everything has that stained quality to it. The box, it's just carried throughout the whole deck. It's really stunning. Yeah, there's nothing else to say. The construction of the deck is beautiful. Cardstock is really lovely. We'll shuffle it at the end and talk. It's that beautiful matte that I adore. It has a very similar feel if you do have the If you have the Oracle of Reflections, it has a very similar feel, except for this is slightly thinner cardstock than this. So that helps if you have that deck, but it's nice. It's not too thick, it's not too thin. It's really stunning cardstock. So there we have that. So let's go ahead and zoom in. And so basically what you have here, and so this is going to be a fairly quick walkthrough because, you know, what we have here is a plant. We have a keyword, and then we have the name of the actual plant. And so here on this, and you can see, if you look across these, the color palette is very much black and white with very faded or muted use of purples, and there's a little yellow there, some purple, mostly purples and pink tones, and I guess, yeah, yellow. So purples, pinks, and yellow tones, but they're very minimally used, and the colors are very muted. It's not a bright deck, which is really stunning. It's a gorgeous effect to it. So here we have the keyword boundary, and the plant is aconite. And I did read that one. I'll read a couple of them just so you can kind of get a feel for how they are. But this is really, I think, a great keyword there. Here we have a sacrifice for, and I have these in order. They did not come in order. I have them in order because I was going to make this index, and then Patrick beat me to it, thankfully, because it saved me trouble, and his looks really nice. So this is actually 52. So here we have sacrifice. An enemy is sacrifice, a dark card, and potential harbinger of tragedy. Professional failure or personal downfall may be in store, but only following the giving of great altruistic effort. It won't feel this way at first, but it was all worth it. So something bad's going to happen, but it's because you are sacrificing. Now, you know, that something dark is coming, a harbinger of tragedy, professional failure, personal downfall, you know, that to me is a little fortune tellery in the terms of, you know, you're about to, you know, walk under a ladder and crash on your head. But the word sacrifice by itself, and then when you look up this plant, that's going to add new, you know, my intentions with this deck is to work with the plants as well. So yes, using the keyword, but then actually researching the plant and getting a feel for the plant and how I would interact, what the plant properties are known for with the keyword of the sacrifice, and see what does that say for me. Because there's a lot that you can say with the word sacrifice that isn't necessarily that a downfall is going to happen or your professional failure is going to happen. And I don't think it necessarily has to be a harbinger of tragedy, because a harbinger is letting us know tragedy is coming, whereas a sacrifice is something that we're actually laying out. You know, we're making that choice. So it's a little bit of an interesting blend of fate words with what isn't actually an act of choice. But she even says, you know, this is her, you know, you use your own intuition on these things. You know, it's good to learn what a deck creator is going for, but I think that always these are tools. You know, I truly believe that decks are tools, and how you use them is going to be up to you, and what does that say to you is going to be up to you. And so I think that you can just go with the word sacrifice and roll with it, right? But if you really want to dig into this kind of deck, I think looking into the properties of the anemone is going to be very helpful. So for example, I looked up anemone and what might have magical properties, and you may want to, you know, find a reputable site. I just grabbed the first one just so that we could kind of get an example of how we can look this up. And so this talks about its what it can do for medicinally, where it's been seen in poetry. We have some Pliny, how Pliny described it. We also have, I lost it, but there was also Tennyson in his Northern Farmer. Talks about that one as well. Gives other names for it. I love this right here. The flower of the wood anemone tells the approach of night or of a shower by curling over its petals like a tent. And it has been said that fairies nestle within, having first pulled the curtains round them. Among the old Romans, to gather the first anemone of the year was deemed a preservative against fever, and so on. So this gives a lot of information here, but I just love that idea. It talks of the approach of night and sacrifice, and what it was talking, that sort of harbinger of something coming, and certainly lends itself to that idea of the coming of the night, or time of coming of sacrifice. So I'm not going to do that obviously for every single one, but I just kind of wanted to show you where looking up the plant itself and working with the plant could be something that will broaden your experience with working with this deck. And I do think that it's good to put a little effort into, if you want to. You can just use it as it is, but then you get more layers the more that you use it. So you can just use the keyword, never look at the guidebook. That's going to tell you a lot, and then you can go into the guidebook to get a little bit more divinatory meaning, and then you can go outside of that and kind of get either to your own understanding of plants, or to learn those, get more learning about those understanding of plants. So here we have, again, I think I was calling it anemone, like a sea anemone, but it's anemone maybe. So I do apologize for that. I'm sure this whole time you were thinking this is not a sea anemone. So next we have Artemisia for focus and release. Here we have the bay laurel for eternal. The keyword here is eternal. I also, before, and this is kind of those synchronicities, right? Before I even thought to purchase this, I was looking at some, trying to find, I've always worked with herbs. In terms of natural medicines, I do believe in using medication from doctors and such, but on the other hand, I also believe in working with natural medicines as well. So for example, I'm someone who gets sinus infections all the time, and I'm more apt to start with some vitamin C, and which is an herb, well, mine comes with rose hips as well, but I use a lot of echinacea to try to stop from having to go right into antibiotics, because antibiotics have across my lifetime done a lot of damage, and so I always can mostly treat using like echinacea and these things. So it's always been of interest of me for my adult life. So I had picked up this book called Secret Medicines from Your Garden, Plants for Healing, Spirituality, and Magic. I have not had this very long, and I haven't had a chance to really work with it, and to give you any review of it. However, one of the things I thought was interesting was this under animal spirit medicines, which is where I kind of has interested me at the moment. It talks about how the Mediwiwin teach that every plant and tree on the earth has a use, and for the Anishinaabe, which are Native American tribe, herbalism is called the bear path. To follow the bear path means knowing how to get to the root of things. Bears delve deep into the soil with their claws and pull out medicines and foods by their roots. A person destined to be an herbalist may dream of bears. Someone on the bear path will work with all aspects of a person, body, mind, and spirit, to get to the root of his or her disease. There is tremendous power in bears to heal others, and that power can hit like a tidal wave. So it goes and talks about this even more fully, and then goes into plants, and then it has a lot of other different animals. But this is the first one I read, and it was really interesting to me because, last year I talked how the spider haunted me a lot. I had a lot of dreams of spiders. Spider cards kept coming up, which are about creativity, and then it really rolled into an understanding when the first concept of making my Lenormand deck really rolled out of that, sitting with, okay, what is all this spider energy? And it kind of just came into manifestation through creating my deck. And I also had several really powerful bear dreams, which is not normally something that I do. I've in fact never had any any experiences with bear totem energy, and I've had a couple really powerful ones. So when I read that, I thought that was really interesting. So there are other books. Larissa is really my sort of go-to for, because she's actually studying horticulture, botany, that kind of thing, as well as also the magical aspect of things. And so her channel, she's gone over some decks, and I know she's going to have some more videos. So I'll put a link to her channel below. You might want to keep an eye out there if these are things that interest you. But I thought it was interesting that I picked this book up first, and then I saw this deck and sent a link to Patrick, and he's like, oh yeah, and we both bought it the exact same day and got it on the same day. But something like this is also going to be helpful to be able to really dive into what the cards might mean. So here we have the Bay Laurel for Eternal, and you see laurels in, there are certain tarot cards, right, that you often will see the laurel card. Laurel is kind of sometimes a symbol of victory, I think, as well. Here we have Tempt and Forget with the Belladonna, which is a beautiful card. And it's an interesting, there are a couple, and I guess I'll set them out because you know how I like to kind of figure out what a deck's doing by separating piles. There's a couple, like for example, we had Focus and Release. Those are two quite different keywords, and so it is interesting to have those combinations there and start to kind of see, okay, well, what's the connection here, I think is really interesting. So I'm actually going to look this one up. So let's see, Belladonna 49. I probably need to laminate that. Tempt, Forget. Belladonna is Tempt, Forget, the deadly accord between charm and harm. Cursory vows may impel facile regress. Beware the seam of stoic glamour and apathetic malice. So we do have that kind of, you're being tempted, but you have to be careful because it almost has a devil feel of the devil card, right? Where there's a temptation there, but if you give in too far to the temptation, you're going to kind of forget your way or lose your way. That's what I kind of see out of it. But again, I know the Belladonna is a very interesting plant, and so I'll be doing some more research into that. Here we have the Beth root as Reflect and Emit. I quite like this double keyword because you can either be reflecting light, right, or you can be emitting light, but in some way you're pushing your energy outward and beaming it outward. So I think that's really, those are interesting keywords. Here we have Bindweed for Connect. I quite like that. Even not having looked up bindweed, I still like the idea of binding with the word connect, which is really neat. Here we have 3 words: dig, pull, and bury, the black kohash root. I always say kosha. I say that wrong every time, but it is dig, pull, and bury. So those are interesting keywords to put together as well. I'm going to look this one up. An omen of hidden truths, of seeds below the surface, perhaps therein should remain. So the language of the guidebook is definitely almost like Shakespearean, not King James, but you know, that idea of that older, an omen of hidden truths, of seeds below the surface, that perhaps therein should remain. There is something you must know yet never share. Like, it kind of has a poetic feel to it, which I quite enjoy. Yeah, it definitely has that feeling like you're looking maybe into an old plant spirit divination book, which is awesome. There is something you must know yet never share. So I guess you might be digging and pulling it up, but once you get it, you're like, oh shoot, I better go back in the ground. Here we have invert fear. Now I quite like this one as well. So sometimes I'm not entirely sure about the connotations of the double words, although this is more of a statement, which I quite like. I know I promise I'm not going to do them all, but I'm curious. Blackthorn is invert fear, a card to foil threats of trespass upon your dread. Like a nightingale, perch amid your peril, harbor betwixt the thorns and daunt the hearts of foes. See, it's like a poem, which is awesome. I can see where that might be difficult for some people who perhaps don't enjoy that type of language and be like, okay, what are you trying to say? But I think it's kind of cool because, again, it just lends to the whole vibe. And from what I understand, and we'll look at that in the next video, there's poem lines in the tarot deck to connect. So that sort of poetic layer is certainly there. Here we have Bloodroot for entrance and entreat. You're going to entrance somebody and you're going to entreat them to you. I quite love that. Here we have Gratitude with the sweet bluebells. Again, I guess that could be a blue. I think that a little purpley, because the tones seem to be purples and pinks, kind of purples and red tones, and then the yellow. But that's really beautiful. Leaf of the Heart. This is borage. Let's look this one up, because I will say that keyword doesn't necessarily say anything to me directly. Well, of course, in the context of just looking at the card. So let's look that one up. Borage is Leaf of the Heart, a card drawn to instill peace between personal battles, moving you to find lulls of passionate repose, a token of courage among woes. Borage is a glowing ember of perseverance. So let's just, in the sake of interest, that's which I love, but let's look up L-E-T-H-E. Leith was one of the 5 rivers of the underworld of Hades. I was thinking death, but that makes sense. It literally means oblivion, forgetfulness, or concealment. So Leaf of the Heart is, I guess, oblivion, or forget the heart, or kind of death to the heart. That's what I was reading it as, is death to the heart, but it's a forgetfulness or concealment. And instill peace between personal lulls of passionate repose. So it's the idea of giving all this passion of the heart a breath, taking a break from that. So that makes sense. So it's not saying kill the heart, death to love. It's just saying there's a lot of passion that gets stirred up around, and sometimes we need to take a breath, right? So that makes sense. See, we're just kind of working through this together, that's all. Here we have Enchant with Cinquefoil, and I'm sure I'm going to slaughter some of these names, but I'll do my best. Here we have Escape with Celandine. Grow Together with Comfrey. I do like the phrases. Poised Stardust with the Cosmos Flowers. I quite like that. Poised Stardust. Like, what does that say to you? Poised Stardust. It's almost like that pause of that but on a big level, because you think of stardust and you think of galaxies and universes, but they're poised on the edge of something. But see, that could be completely wrong. Well, there's no wrong answers, right? We are supposed to use our intuition, and depending on the question and the reading, it's going to come up with all kinds of things. A sweeping call for balance. Yeah, so it's that poised. And you can see that here with the two here. It's that poised, right, on the beginning of things. Poised on the edge, that idea of balance. Quite lovely. Fate with the Dahlia. It's beautiful drawing there. Transfer Grief with the Elderflowers. How interesting is that? These aren't keywords that you traditionally always see, or titles that you see in decks, so I quite like that. Reverie with Elecampane. Who knows how to pronounce that? But reverie. Merriment with Eyebright. Ameliorite with Feverview. So see, that was one that I would say, okay. And I like, I like having to look up words. The same thing goes with the Rackham Oracle. Some people didn't like that because you had to look up some of the words. I'm not opposed to having to look up words. It's really not difficult. Ameliorite is a healing card for when spirit-filling rations are low and pain overwhelms through attrition. The Pythia will, at times, request you wallow, but not now. Feverview reminds us that meager moments brim with creative magic. Keep the sprigs for color and burn your switches for warmth. Let remedies billow up around you. So I quite like that. I would not have gotten any of that from just looking at the, the plant and or the word. So I'm going to look up the word because you know what? You learn things when you look things up. Make something that is bad or unsatisfactory better. See, there we go. We've got a new word. I love having new words. Here we have From Ash, the Fireweed. Unspoken and unsummoned. That's interesting. And I think that in the context of a reading, one or the other or both may pop up to the forefront when you're doing the reading depending on the question. Embrace for Globe Mallow. Or mallow, like a marshmallow. Forgo with the Hawthorn. Errant Repose with the Henbane. Cleanse with hyssop or hyssop. I've never known if it's hyssop or hyssop. Probably, 5 different people will say 5 different things. Influence with indigo. Take root with the magnolia. Disquiet the myth with the mandrake. I quite like that because mandrake has the myth, right, of, is it screaming? Does it scream? I believe it screams for something. Let's see if it talks about it. 28. See, this would be a pain in the butt if I didn't have this index. Mandrake is called Disquiet the Myth, a call to disrupt gilded personal narratives. Beware the potential for atrophy from self-mythology, but also allow fantasy to outline sober truths. Be present and dig. Fate, honestly fulfilled, stokes the wildest and most startling malaise. Outshine apathy with a marigold. It's kind of, apathy is kind of what Rider-Waite-Smith shows as the 4 of Cups, and so this is probably going to lift up that energy. Love's Will with the Moonflower is gorgeous. In Love and Death with the Myrtle. Look Away with the Narcissus. Oh, well, this is Narcissus. I thought maybe this was different. Narcissist, but that makes sense. Stop looking at the mirror. Begin Forever. So forever starts now. I love that. Nasturtium. The Sorcerer's Violet with Periwinkle. Periwinkle. Sorcerer's Violet 19. Periwinkle is a Sorcerer's Violet, a card that reminds readers to ward off ill fortune through awareness, both a harbinger of malice and a protector against it. The Sorcerer's Violet, or 100 Eyes as it's known, stands guard for us in grief, love, or tragedy. Endure for Passion Flower. Sedate, of course, with Poppy. That certainly makes sense. Sea Change with Protea. Sanctuary, I love Queen Anne's Lace. With Queen Anne's Lace. Bite, breathe, and conceive with the quince. That's interesting keywords, isn't it? Well, let's look it up because we can. People can fast forward. Quince is Bite, Breathe, Conceive, a card for readers eager to indulge their creative spirit. Avoid a myopic fixation on results. Instead, delight in the bewilderment and relish in the fertile enigma of your vision. So just bite into it, right? Just if you're excited, you really want to indulge your creativity, just take a bite, breathe, and conceive something. I do like that. Open Hearts with the Rose. Remember, beautiful, with the rosemary. Ancient Sight with the sage. I love that. Devil's Bit with the scabiosa. Now this is the one I think I got when I just got the deck and I just pulled a card. 13. I think this was my Scabiosa is Devil's Bit, a card steering readers to persist against the corrosive temper of envy. Malevolent forces lurk, fearing your potential for goodwill. It may be too late. Your idealism may already be maimed, but fractured roots still flourish, and often in new directions. So there is a little bit of a, some of them have a little bit of a dun 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 feel to the meanings. But you don't have to always take them. You can just go with that understanding, and where there could be some fracturing in the roots with the way people are relating to you, or you might be relating to other people. And there may need, it's going to still be able to flourish, but it may take some time, and you may need to pay some attention to it. Here we have Absolve with Time. Quell with Uva Ursi, and Peace, of course, with Valerian. That makes sense. You use Valerian for sleeping and that kind of thing. Calmness, so Peace works with that. So there we have the card. So we can definitely see, I think, this is not a deck to get if you're not interested in putting a little bit of effort into it. You may need to look some words up, right? You may, if you want to deeper the understanding, you may want to look up the plants themselves. You look up the guidebook, of course, but also look up the plants themselves, and you may need to look up some words, which I think personally is really awesome. I am all for edification. They shuffle like a dream. I mean, literally like a dream. They shuffle amazingly. I can definitely see using this as in that like moon draws and things of that nature. I'm also hoping to find crystals that are associated with those particular plants. So I'm intending to actually do some work with this deck. Do some journaling, kind of list, each card, look into the plant, look into any of the mythology, look into perhaps crystals that go with it, that kind of thing. So this is definitely something I intend to putting some work into. So I'm going to pull 3 cards: Boundary, Invert, Fear, and Connect. Now, how neat is that? Because if you think about that, here we have needing to set boundaries like we talked about at the beginning. You need to be careful. You need to be wary. I believe, and I could be wrong, so don't quote me on this. I still haven't started working yet. But I believe that this is poisonous, and there is that idea of needing to be careful and set your boundaries and be aware. But don't let fear override. Invert fear. Like, okay, take that information, set your boundaries, be mindful about your boundaries, but don't let that, cause you to not connect with people because you have so much fear that you've walled yourself off. And then what's the very last one is the idea of connecting. So those 3 cards, I think, work really beautifully together. And even just on a just keyword level, without going any deeper than that, those work really well. So let's take a quick look at this little moon spread, because that interests me. So here we have, let me just see what are the, we've got, okay, where's my glasses? Definitely need your glasses for this. Waning gibbous preparation, new moon. Oh, I see. It's got the different, it's got all the different moons. Let's see. Waning moon, new moon, last quarter, embark, and waning question. So it's definitely the last, that's the waning side of things. Okay. So let's take a look here. I'll lay the cards out. The first one is, I can't read it, preparation. So we have the waning gibbous. So this would stand for preparation. So prepare for peace. That's good. Or be at peace as preparation, depending on how you want to read that. And number 2 is last quarter. So what we need to release, we need to absolve, right? We have some absolution to, we may need to have some, not forgiveness, but we may need to, that's interesting. I'll come back to that one too. So 1, 2, 3 is waning crescent or creation. We have merriment. We need to do some, come to things with peace. There's some stuff that needs to be absolved so that we can create some merriment. Because we have to release this. We have the create merriment. Number 4 is something that's going to be reborn from ashes. Beautiful. Gorgeous. Let's pull these in a little closer. And then the 5th card is to what we're going to embark on, which is love's will. So that's a beautiful looking spread, if I do say so. So let's just take a quick look. So here we have, again, preparation. What are we going to do in preparation? We are going to put ourselves into a peaceful state. So I think that that's very clear. You really don't have to think much about that, right? The second one is, what do we need to release, which is time. Not the, time the plant, which is absolve. So let's just see what they say for absolve. Time is absolved when you must remit all shame and embark anew. Time will cleanse you of mortal burdens and banish all noxious forces externally or within. So we're going to absolve ourselves, apparently. We're going, you go to a priest for absolution, that kind of going to a priest in a Catholic sense, where you're going to put your sins out, and then the priest is that intermediary, and God is going to absolve you of your sins. So this is that idea of you remitting shame and starting fresh. So get rid of any feelings of guilt and shame. Come from a place of peace. Release feelings of shame and guilt, right? In order to be able to create that sense of merriment, that sense of delight, to kind of restore a sense of happiness that we have here. The 4th one being rebirth. And I love this because we actually have from ash, which, gives us that feeling of rebirth. And it's fireweed, so it certainly makes me think of phoenixes. Let's just look to see what theirs is, since we're learning here. Fireweed is from ash, a card for despondent times when all feels lost to other's ill will. Scour for plumes and rake the embers of room until ground reclaims its fertile path. At night, the survivors will glow. So in number 4 with rebirth, it is literally, okay, maybe there's been some difficult things, but you're going to dig through the ashes and find those things that have survived that tower moment. And the rebirth is going to begin. So if we come to a place of peace, we let go of shame and guilt so that we can have some happiness back into our lives. Yes, we have to dig through the ashes a bit, do a little bit of work to find those things. But at night, survivors will glow. How awesome is that? There are pieces that are important and key that we can find in the ashes to begin again. And then the very last card is embark. And here we are going to embark on love's will with the moonflower, which I love because, we're doing a moon reading. So let's take a look at that one. A card that finds you beholden to romantic enchantment. Give in to the gravity of love. Absorb its kinetic energy and waltz upon the orbit of your satellite. I love the words. I love the guidebook phrasing for sure. You feel like you're reading poetry, which just puts you in the mood for this kind of thing. So I think that's actually good. You're falling into love, right? Not necessarily has to be romantic love. It can just be that sense of embracing love again. I think these cards, work really beautifully together in terms of a message. I'm really, really thrilled with that first, solid reading with it. I think it's gorgeous. So there you have it. This has been a look at the Pythia Botanica Oracle by Layla and Olive. I think it's an amazing deck. I think this index should have been included, or it should have been numbered, or it should have been alphabetized. I think that it is going to require some work from you, which is not a negative in my opinion. I think that sometimes it's really easy just to fall on those quick things where we don't have to put any energy into something, and I don't necessarily think that that is best or better. It's just what it is. And I think having these decks where putting some work into it are going to bring up more and more layers, I think that's only a good thing. And so definitely 2 thumbs up for me. I'm really excited to be working with this deck, and this will literally be one that I'll be working with, because we got it on with the intention. I bought this, and Patrick bought his as well, with that intention of really putting in that time with it. And so I'm excited about that. So I hope you've enjoyed this, and watch out for the next one. It won't necessarily be the same day, but I will be doing one on the Ophidia Rosa Tarot as well.